Hi everyone, this is Stephanie DeJaeghere. I'm one of the Lyon County Master Gardeners, and we're here today at the Lyon County Marshall Library out in the wonderful garden that they have right outside the children's library. It's a beautiful day here today, and we thought we would spend a little time talking to you about gardening. With the pandemic, sometimes we are concerned about all the bad things that are happening, but one of the good things as far as the places where I volunteer is I see so many more people out there planting gardens and taking care of their own personal landscape. So we thought we would take a little bit of time to talk about some of the different things that are going on in our garden. Before we get to that point, we would like to talk a little bit about the Master Gardener program. The Master Gardener program is run through the University of Minnesota Extension. It has been ongoing for a number of years. I currently am serving in my 28th year of being a Master Gardener. So I've spent a lot of time with this program. I have enjoyed a lot of the different things I can do with this program. It is a volunteer program. You are trained through the University of Minnesota Extension with the U of M professors in horticulture. So you not only get to go out into the communities and share some of your expertise, but you also get to learn a lot more about gardening than what you probably have done before. We have some wonderful brochures about becoming a Master Gardener that I can have here at the library, but you can also, for those who wish to stay home, you can access that information on the University of Minnesota Extension website. We have a small group here in Lyon County, and we take care of all sorts of things from working with school children and adults to sharing information at the farmers markets and at fair time and having plant sales, you name it. We even have our own gardening program that we do every year. There is a fee for it. That is something that we can discuss with you. You can talk to any of the Lyon County Master Gardeners or go online again. And also every year that you are a Master Gardener, you have to have 5 continuing ed credits. So it's not a one-time thing where you learn so much and then you move on. The U of M keeps going with you through the process, teaching you more and more, and they actually give us many materials to use for programs like we're doing here today. So there's my sales pitch on becoming a Master Gardener. If you're interested in more about that, go online or contact one of us. We can really use some volunteers in our program here in Lyon County. One of the things that has recently been up on our big question board lately for gardening is Japanese beetles. Japanese beetles for a long time only really lived and existed around the metro area. And then a couple years ago, we started seeing signs of them here in Lyon County. And now, just before I came here today, I learned through the Minnesota Department of Ag, it is something that they have confirmed is here. If you want to know exactly where it is, basically in Marshall, it is around the golf course and it is around Legion Field Park. So if you live around those areas, you might see Japanese beetles. Most of the time, before we even know they're there, we see the damage that they make. They basically eat the plant down to nothing. They skeletonize it, so that means just the stem is left, or maybe the leaf veins are left. They eat absolutely everything else, and they're not choosy. They like to eat everything. So it could be your vegetables, it could be something in your perennial gardens, and they're kind of tough to get rid of. Believe it or not, the easiest thing is not to run out to the store and buy powders or sprays or things like that. What you need is a Ziploc bag in your hand, and basically picking them off, putting them in a Ziploc bag. Once you're done picking all of them off that you can find, they don't move very fast, so they're easy to catch. Put them in a Ziploc bag, shut the Ziploc bag, and step on them, and then throw the bag away. That's the easiest way to get rid of them. If you don't do something about them once you figured out you have them, they within a week can eat quite a bit of your garden, and that'd be a sad thing to happen since you've been working so hard on your garden. I do know that here in Marshall, I've had a few gardens that are towards US Bank that have them. They are a metallic, shiny green color beetle. And there, of course, Mother Nature can't make anything easy for us. There is a look-alike beetle out there that doesn't cause problems. So how do you know the difference? The Japanese beetles on the back side of their shell have 2 white dots. If you see that, then you know for sure you have Japanese beetles. These are not emerald ash borers, which happen to also be a shiny green beetle. So they are kind of like the 2 scourges that we worry about. Emerald ash borer is currently not in our area. The closest it is to us is Brown County, and also over in Sioux Falls. They would have the closest places to us right now. They are active, so moving firewood, taking down trees, especially if they're ash trees, you have to be very, very careful in how things are handled there. But those are the 2 insects right now that we worry about the most as far as causing damage. I have brought along some other things. I know one thing that is brought up at this time quite a bit every year is what is happening to my tomatoes. We have had the most perfect growing condition for growing tomatoes in many, many years. It's just amazing to me how everybody's garden looks just so great after 2 or 3 years of so much rain and cool weather. We finally hit the jackpot, really. And so we have some brochures. It's called Managing Tomato Problems in Your Garden. One thing I've been hearing a lot about is something called blossom end rot. So it's really discouraging. You walk out to your tomato patch, you think, oh great, I'm going to have that BLT sandwich today, and you pick that tomato and turn it over and the whole bottom of the tomato is rotten. What happened? What's going on? Well, it's nothing really that you did. It has a lot to do with water, believe it or not. It's a problem with how the plant is moving calcium. That's right, calcium, like what you find in milk products and things like that, is not moving through the plant properly, and it causes a problem where the blossom or the flower was on the bottom of that tomato, and it will actually cause it to start rotting. The only thing you can do is to make sure that your tomatoes get around 1 inch of water every few days, at least a couple inches to 2-3 inches a week. They drink a lot when they are putting those beautiful fruits on the vine. When they don't get the water, particularly if you have them in a container garden of some kind or a raised garden, I've been seeing a lot of raised gardens, they take a lot more moisture, you will have blossom end rot. And basically just providing them water, it helps to move the calcium through the tomato plant a lot better, and then it goes away. The next thing we see, and we're a little bit early for it, but you might start seeing it a little bit if you've had it before, is the blights. A lot of folks will call me and say, you know, I'm losing a lot of leaves. Maybe I've had tomatoes fall off my tomato plant. What's going on? It is blight, and that's actually a fungus. If you haven't done it already and you do have tomato plants, the best thing to do for tomato plants, if you have blight or you're worried about blight, is to mulch, mulch, mulch. And not just a little bit, not 1 inch or 2, we're talking at least 6 inches or more, and keeping it maintained, because blight lives in the soil. It's a soil-borne pathogen. When it rains or you water, it splashes up onto the leaves, and then it takes off from there. And unfortunately, in a lot of the literature that we have from the U of M, they'll say you need to rotate your crops. I understand that philosophy, but when you have a very small garden, it's very hard to rotate your crops, so you're a lot better off just mulching. Nice thing about mulching is if you're mulching and you're going to keep moisture in the ground, it will also take care of the blossom end rot. So you can take care of 2 things at one time. So that is something also to think about. Late blight will come later in the fall. Again, it's something that's manageable if you mulch your soil a lot. Other thing about doing a lot of mulching is it will help take care of the weeds too. It won't take care of all of them, but it'll help a lot with that whole thing. So that's something to think about. We have some flyers about that. And then going on to the watering, one thing the U of M has been doing is they're talking a lot about water wisely. So we have some brochures of information about that too. This one happens to be together with the Extension and the Arboretum, and we're talking about watering with a little bit more of a conscience. Now the last 3 years we haven't had to worry about that. We've always worried that there wasn't as much time to get things in because we had too much water. And this year it actually has been absolutely perfect for that. You maybe have not had to do a lot of watering, just maybe your potted plants, things like that. But there are things you can do to control how much water you need in your landscape. Two big areas is you either have a garden and or a lawn to worry about. As far as the garden goes, again, going back to mulching is the best thing. You can use your own recipe for mulch. You can use grass hay, alfalfa hay, straw. You can use wood chips. There are some cities around us that actually use sand. They use about 6 or 8 inches or more of sand. It seems like a strange thing to do, but it works really, really well. Keeps the moisture in, and then you just have to move the sand back and pull out your plants, and then the next spring you plant again and move the sand back in. It's kind of like a reusable mulch. So those things will help. As far as your lawn goes, you don't always have to water your lawn. I know we appreciate and like to have those green lawns, and some of us like actually to go out and mow. There's some of us not so much. And so by not watering your lawn, you actually will let Mother Nature take care of it, and then it will go dormant on its own. There's nothing that's going to happen to your lawn. The variety of grasses that we plant are naturally made that way. The variety will actually go dormant, and they're very happy to do it and very happy in the fall to come back and be a nice green lawn before winter sets in. So that's an option you can have. If you choose that you need to really have that luscious green lawn, then you will need to make sure that your lawn is watered appropriately so that the water is not running on the sidewalk or your driveway or out in the street. You can set your settings if you have a sprinkler system to make sure that your lawn is watered once or twice a week and deeply. So don't water it ½ inch every day. You're much better off letting it have the sprinklers on for at least 2 inches or more. And maybe you're not sure, how do I know my sprinklers are set right? You can actually put dishes in different places out in your lawn and time it and say within an hour, does it look like there's 1 inch of water in that Cool Whip container? Is there more than that? Then you can use that to set your sprinkler system a little bit better. It's an easy way to figure it out. Going from regular lawns to bee lawns, we have something interesting going in Minnesota this year. The U of M, along with the state of Minnesota and the Department of Ag, have decided to put forth some grant money for bee lawns. We could apply for them out here, but I think most of the folks who got the grants were up in the metro area. Basically, you remove a lawn as you know it, and a lawn that is a bee lawn is made up of low-growing, flowering plants. So all of the things you can think of in the past that we've wanted to get out, like clover, creeping Charlie, they have beautiful flowers too. We're starting to decide that these pollinators cannot survive on a green lawn. There's nothing for them to eat there. So we're going to start inviting them into our yards by providing it in our lawns. So a couple things that are interesting about it is that once you have it established, you probably only need to mow it once or twice a year. So if you're really busy in the summer, this would be a great option. If you like to have your own nature area for the kids and the family to watch all the pollinators, from butterflies to bees to the pollinating wasps, it's a great place to have your own little nature preserve in your yard. And once it's established, it's very beautiful. And what's interesting is that the U of M and the state of Minnesota actually had small grants for homeowners to literally dig up their lawns and put in these bee lawns. And I wasn't sure how well it would go over because they had to work with some of the cities to make sure that it was approved with their systems and so on. And as it turns out, they had enough funding for about 750 to 1,000 residents to get that granting money, and they had over 6,000 people apply. So the interest is out there. The interest is out there. You do put a lot of work in it the first year, but after that, it's amazing how quickly they take off, and the rewards that you have are just tenfold more than what it costs for your time to do this. So the interest in it all is that we go from having things like a lawn that insects can barely survive into, to other things like ground plums, tickweed. We have self-heal. A lot of folks, that might be a new one, is a purple flowering plant, calico asters. If you want to know more about some of these plants, let's see, we have white clover. You can visit the Lyon County Fairgrounds. We have a pollinator garden out there. The last couple of years it hasn't looked like much, but now this year it is crazy with just flowers out there. I've never seen so many flowers. We also have grasses out there. We have several kinds of native grasses and other varieties out there of grasses, and a lot of folks don't realize that pollinators need grasses in order to lay their eggs on. The Dakota skipper used to be prevalent out here. It's a little tiny butterfly about the size of a quarter. If you ever go out to the nature preserve out at Lake Benton, you will probably have a better chance of seeing them out there. One of the things that's interesting about the Dakota skipper is it needs little blue stem in order to lay its eggs and to cocoon on. If you can have all the flowers in the world, but if you don't have little blue stem, you're taking out one piece of its life cycle and it can't survive. We have little blue stem out at the Fairgrounds Garden. We have big blue stem, so if your kids haven't seen that before, please bring them out. We have all sorts of perennial wildflowers growing out there. You will notice that many of the wildflowers that grow in our area consist of a very few handful of colors. Yellow is predominant, purple, there's a few pinks and white, and then we also have a few red colors. So we have all that out there, and there's more getting ready to flower as the summer moves on. So it's kind of an interesting thing to take a look at that and see how things grow. And if you're interested, you can always contact me and let me know, and we can provide you with some more information about how to establish bee lawns. One other thing that Master Gardeners really push is soil testing. And you might think, well, you know, we're halfway through the growing season, why do I need to worry about soil testing? Well, soil testing is a very good thing to have, because it's at this time of the year, if you're having problems in the garden and you know it's not a disease, you know it's not an insect, the next thing I would be looking at is it your soil? Sometimes our soil gets tired out after many, many years of gardening. So the U of M offers a soil test. It's very easy to take. They have some very specific instructions in here on how to take it. You send it up to the U of M soil lab. You get your results back in about a week or two, and it costs $17, so it's pretty cheap. And the nice thing about it is not only will they tell you what you do or don't have in your soil, they will also tell you how you can fix any problems you might have. So they're going to want to hear, for example, boy, I don't get the tomato crop I once did, or maybe my root crops look terrible. You know, what is going on with the soil? And so they can help us figure that out. Any of us Master Gardeners can help you figure out what the report says. But the U of M has a very nice way of spelling everything out, right down to if you need fertilizer, what kind of fertilizer to buy. And then once you take your report into the store, how do I find that type of fertilizer? Because it's not always easy to determine what you need or what you don't need. And so you do have help here, and the U of M does a really great job as far as spelling that all out. So that's a key component. If you have problems that aren't identifiable, a lot of times the next step, if it's not insects, it's not a disease, look at your soil and see what's happening with that. And after all of that, you've raised all of your vegetables in your garden, you're going to want to learn a little bit about canning. The University of Minnesota is going out there training the Master Gardeners. I've taken the class. I believe there's a couple others that will be taking the class on how to can and otherwise preserve your food. It could be freezing, it could be dehydrating, canning, either by boiler or with a canner, and we can walk you through the steps. One thing the U of M has changed on their extension website is that you can look up home preservation, and they have great videos. So if you're uncomfortable hanging out with somebody right now with the pandemic, you can go on and watch these videos over and over again. They go through everything step by step. So it doesn't matter if you want to make jelly or jam, or you just want to make some refrigerator pickles, or if you just want to put up whole tomatoes or that salsa that you've been wanting to preserve for the winter months. They're really good at doing that, and you can find them again on the U of M extension website. We have an 800 number here on the cards. I can leave here a few with the library that you can actually call. So if you watch a video and you're still not sure, they have people on the other end of the line that can talk to you. We can talk to you as well. For those of you who have been preserving or canning for a while, I want to challenge you to maybe watch this, because as a person myself who has done canning for many, many years, there have been some changes in places that I did not expect. For example, one of the changes is that tomatoes, we used to not worry about them being acidic enough when we canned them, whether it was by the boiling method or the canning method. The varieties have changed so much that that is no longer true. And that one really threw me for a loop. I thought tomato is acidic and always has been and always will be. And that's not the case. The pH is actually not as acidic in our newer varieties as what it used to be. So one of the things, just for an example, that the U of M is having us do is add a little bit of lemon juice to our acidic products to make sure we do get the pH down so that we don't have any pathogens growing in our canned goods. So if you've been a canner for a while like me, it might be well worth your effort to kind of watch and see what they are now recommending. The great thing about it is it's not something that like Ball or any of the other canning supply companies are pitching. This is research-based evidence that's telling us that our tomatoes are not acidic enough just to be canned as is anymore. So I even had to change how I do things. We also had a couple questions regarding gardening that we can talk about, and that's one thing that Master Gardeners do. Any kind of questions surrounding gardening, we can help you out. We do talk a little bit about a title that says that we are a Master Gardener. I think the better title will be Master at Finding Answers to Questions. Sometimes we don't know, sometimes we've just had the training, sometimes we have to go to the U of M and double check on a few things. And so we do have the tools to help everybody find the answer. So one of the questions we had here is, can you use tires for surrounding your tomatoes? As something that people have done on and off over the years. The question is, how quickly do tires degrade once they're outside in the elements? And the answer is a lot faster than you think. The rubber itself, maybe not so much, but there are chemicals that are in many of those types of things, and they degrade, they get into the soil, and then your plant will actually pick some of that up, and it'll move through the plant to your fruit, depending on what it is. Tomato, I know some people use that method for potato growing and things like that. So it's probably not the best idea to have. I think a more popular method is using 5-gallon pails with the bottom cut out. So that would be something that you could do instead. They make a great way of protecting your tomato plants in the springtime when we have those really super windy days. We've certainly had our share of those this year. Another question that we've been getting quite a bit is how to maintain moisture in those raised beds. We kind of talked about it a little bit before, but we have so many folks who are gardening for the first time or have gone back to gardening, and they have raised beds. Either they're up way off the ground or they're on the ground and raised up. They can be a little tricky to maintain as far as moisture. And one thing you can do, the same thing as we would do in a regular garden setting, is mulch them. You probably don't need to have the 6 inches of mulch because it'll stack up and probably fall off. But if you maintain at least 3 inches of mulch of your choosing, that would work great. Again, you can use straw or hay, grass hay, anything like that will work just fine. The sand thing works really great too. So those are some different ideas for you to use. And it doesn't matter if you have one that's 4 feet off the ground or from the ground up about 2 feet high, it's about the same thing. And then the last question we have today is that, again, going back to the raised gardens, a lot of folks are planting strawberries in those raised gardens, trying to get away from the grass and the weeds growing in those strawberry beds. It really depends on where you keep your raised bed come winter, if those strawberries are going to be able to make it through. And a lot of it is because even in a regular setting where they're raised on the ground, you should be mulching them and mulching them heavily. It's not the freezing that kills them off. It's the freezing and the thawing and the freezing pattern that we have in the spring that is very, very hard on strawberries. So you're much better off, for example, once the strawberries have gone to sleep in the fall and winter setting in, if you can move your raised bed into the garage where it will be out of the wind, out of the elements, and then late April, somewhere about late April, about May 15th, then you can take it back outside and let spring come to the strawberries and start getting them going. If you have a raised bed that is on the ground, I would highly recommend that you mulch them very, very well with straw or grass hay. Leaves are okay too. They tend to compact a little bit, and then the next spring, about May 15th, pull the mulch off. The last day of frost for us is May 15th, so that's why that's kind of our goal with our mulch. We have the same problem with many of our perennials. It's not so much the freezing, it's not so much the winter itself, as much as how much freezing and thawing we have in March and April that causes the most concerns. So if you have any questions about becoming a master gardener or any of the materials I talked about today, you can go online to the U of M Extension website. They have some great materials on there online. They have a lot of videos, so you can watch videos to find out more about any of these topics. Thank you.